Hi, this is Jerry Reynolds for Sacramento Electronic Supply, who has been servicing the Sacramento area's industrial electronic needs for over 75 years. Family owned and operated, Sacramento Electronics is a registered California small business that prides themselves on their customer service. Their showroom and warehouse are open to the public to browse. Whether you're looking for wire and cable, tools and testers, connectors, or relays, Sacramento Electronics is open for you Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., directly south of Costco in Rancho Cordova, or hey, visit them online 24/7 at www.sacelec.com and do it. Oh, another rebound in a crowd by the Brock Ness Monster. Ooh, that would be deja vu. Jim Bob Foley, holy moly. How about the Tasmanian Slovenian with the stop, drop, and pop? Hippity hop to the King's Herald Barbershop.
You're listening to the King's Herald Show, a bi-weekly NBA podcast that covers all the ups and downs, ins and outs of your one and only Sacramento Kings. As always, I'm your host, Will Griffith, and with me today, writer for the King's Herald and my co-host, Tony Xypteras. Tony, how's it going today?
Will, it's going great. I'm not used to recording so many consecutive positive podcasts, but man, this Kings team gives you new reasons to be excited every week. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
It's definitely weird being in a position where we don't have to just speculate on trade rumors with the trade deadline coming so close. We actually have things to talk about other than that. So with us today to break it all down, he's a former Sacramento Kings head coach, GM and color analyst, general manager of a WNBA champion, Indiana Basketball Hall of Famer. It's the true pride of French League himself. It's Jerry Reynolds. Hey, Jerry, how's it going?
Up good, guys. Obviously, just can't wait to get started. A lot of little topics, but most of them positive.
Most of them positive. So we've crossed the halfway point since the last we spoke, and all the Sacramento Kings have done since then is go 5-1, tied an NBA record for most threes in a quarter, climbed to the third seed in the Western Conference. They lead the Pacific Division by 3.5 games, produced the Western Conference Player of the Week in Domantas Sabonis. And oh yeah, just today they signed the brains behind this turnaround to a 3-year extension. So that's not a bad 2 weeks, right? Tell me how you guys, how's the world been treating you guys? The basketball world, how's it been treating you these last 2 weeks, guys?
Well, for me, it's been just a lot of fun. I mean, with all the activity, quite honestly, the NFL and the NBA really is getting into good swing. I mean, it's just a fan, just a sports fan's dream type thing right now. And of course, for me, just the fact that now the games seem a little more meaningful for the Kings and just the overall playoff situation.
Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I'm watching the Memphis game last night, and I think they started with 10 for 10 for threes in the first quarter, and I'm just like, this team at some point they got to start playing worse, but they seriously keep playing better, keep giving me new reasons to buy in. And now as the 3 seed, signing with McNair to an extension just a couple weeks before the trade deadline is probably the smart move there too. So they keep knocking things out of the park, and it's getting more comfortable. I'm getting more used to it, but it still is an adjustment period to not having to be so negative all the time.
I agree. Obviously, we should talk about the big news of the day first. This afternoon, it was announced by Adrian Wojnarowski that Monte McNair has agreed to a 3-year contract extension with the Sacramento Kings, which lines him up perfectly with Mike Brown's deal. They're also working on a new contract for assistant GM Wes Wilcox. So, Jerry, Tony, what are your thoughts? Hours after it happened, what are your thoughts on Monte McNair's new deal with the Kings?
Well, I think it's a great thing. I mean, obviously he's proven himself now, I think, to all of us. In fact, if you weren't. So, I am definitely a big fan of this move.
Okay. Or Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I think everyone played this the right way. I give Vivek credit for not jumping into an extension too early before seeing some positive results. And it's awesome. Like it would have been obviously a bad thing if McNair never signed, but the fact that McNair did sign his extension kind of tells me that the Kings played it right on their end. McNair played it right on his end. I just mentioned it earlier, but the trade deadline's on February 9th. So it's great that they got it done before that, because you don't want to make I don't know, long or short-term moves when the GM isn't locked up. So I think the Kings, again, they handled the situation perfectly. We've seen them give executives extensions before they deserved it. We've seen them give extensions to players too late and didn't hit on the right timing on a lot of these contract extensions. But this one, it seems like they really nailed. And McNair has done an amazing job. We've talked about it in this podcast so many times. So he definitely deserved it. But again, just a little bit of credit to the Kings too for how they played it.
Jerry, I'm curious as to your thoughts on the timing of the contract extension. Is this something that you feel like they kind of hit at the right time? Is this something that you might have pulled off earlier this season? How do you feel like Vivek has done in terms of signing Monte right now, just a few weeks before the trade deadline, rather than maybe waiting for a playoff berth or at the beginning of the season, perhaps?
Well, I think the timing is pretty good. I don't know. It's one of those things to where you could always wait and just see how the team does. And if they continue to do better, you're in risk of losing a valuable asset. And so it's also true that if you sign too soon, you're not sure how the product's going to end up, and you might sign a GM that, boy, you're sorry you signed, as we know has happened in the past here recently in a couple of cases. So to me, it's like they're at the halfway mark of the season past. If you're an owner and you're really wanting to say, push for the playoffs, well, there's no reason to believe you're not pushing for the playoffs. You're third, and you're fun to watch. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I mean, in my mind, there's just no criticism. People will, but they can't. It's the right time, the right guy.
Tony, as a fan, from the fans' perspective here, how surprised are you if you could go back in time and tell yourself at the beginning of the season, like, hey, this is going to happen? Would you have believed it? Would you have believed that not only Monte McNair got a contract extension, but it'd be on the backs of the Kings being a third seed in the Western Conference halfway through the season?
Absolutely not. My wildest optimism would not have predicted a home playoff series if the season ended today, which is what a 3 seed in the West gets you. Everyone's just done such a great job. Mike Brown, I think, has been maybe Monte McNair's best move. And the fact that both of those contracts now align as a fan makes me very happy, because we've been on this carousel of GMs and coaches on different timelines for, I don't know, it feels like 16 years. I don't know if it's been quite that long, but that's how long it feels like, where this very important contract alignment has not been in place, and now they have it, and it's the two guys who are doing a great job. So if you can't feel good about the Kings right now, then you're just not you're not willing to feel good about them. So, and I don't see any of that, to be fair. Like, no one, I'm sure there will be criticisms for something at some point, but what I've seen is positive reactions across the board from people in Sacramento, from the national media too. The people who are getting their flowers for how the Kings are performing have deserved it.
I made a joke in the at a Kings Herald headquarters today, basically saying that today would be the perfect day for Monte McNair to trade Keegan Murray. if ever there was a day for Monte McNair to pull that move, it is today. Yeah. So, okay. So I want to get into just a couple of things that I've seen in the last few weeks. Obviously, we don't have much to complain about in terms of losses. We can talk about the Philly game a little bit later. But the Kings have gone 5-1 during this stretch since the last time we talked. And there's a couple of players outside of the normal Fox and Sabonis that I want to talk about and get your guys' opinions on. The first of which is Trey Lyles. His play of late. The night our last podcast was released, Trey basically willed the Kings to a win in the fourth quarter against the Houston Rockets, where he took basically what was a tight game at that point to a blowout. Went like 5 for 5 from the field. He had 6 rebounds in the fourth, wound up with 20 points off of the bench. He ran off a streak of double-digit scoring for like 3 games after that. He had a lull for 2 games. And then just the other night against Memphis, 6 of 8 from 3, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks, 24 points. Guys, just from each of your perspective, what's gotten into Trey Lyles?
Well, I think he's starting to reach the potential a lot of people thought. He was a first rounder, and some people thought he would go a little higher than he did. He slipped a little, but one of those guys, like so many first round sure things aren't sure things. He went to Utah. I think that's where he was drafted first, I believe, and they had guys ahead of him, and so it didn't work there. So, and as Reggie Theus used to say, once you're drafted by a team and they trade you, nobody looks at you the same again. And so Trey's bounced around a little bit. Honestly, this looks like a perfect fit to me. And I think you guys remember the last time we talked, I just felt like you got to play him more, play him, at power forward as well as center. And I have no problem with what Coach Brown does, but it does seem to me like the way they're playing it, they're not playing with a traditional 4 offensively or defensively. And once you understand that, well, Trey creates a lot of problems, more problems than does Metu or Holmes, I think. Now, at times I would understand why you might want to certainly play Holmes, and I wouldn't be opposed to him playing Holmes, by the way, but just because this team lacks physicality down there, I mean, and athleticism at times, Sabonis at times just can't hang with some of the real big tough guys, So I went on and on here, but anyway, yeah. I mean, that's my thoughts.
Tony, how do you feel about Trey Lyles' recent stretch with the Kings?
I think he's now peaking, but he's had a pretty good year the whole time. You could make case he's been their most consistent bench player. Malik Monk has had maybe higher highs, but some lower lows. Davion's offense hasn't been there often enough for me. And so Lyles has been a steady contributor this whole season off the bench. And this last stretch has been his best yet. And it's exciting. The fit seems so good. He's still young, so he came up in the same class as a lot of these guys. He fits, like Jerry kind of said, at any position in the front court or even at center if you need him to. He's playing a lot of minutes with the starters too, just to show how moldable he is. It gives Mike Brown a real nice option there. And I guess my only issue with Trey Lyles is that he's a free agent at the end of the year, and he's becoming a pretty valuable piece of what the Kings are building off the bench. We'll see if he continues to play this well for the rest of the season, but there was a time where Trey Lyles was a pretty sought after young player in this league. The Spurs traded for him. Teams acquired him because they liked his potential and they liked who he could be as a player, and he kind of got cast off in the last few years. Maybe people sort of gave up on him a little bit. But McNair found a player here. I think he came in the Marvin Bagley trade, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think the Kings got the best player in that deal. So I'm happy. I'm sure McNair's happy. And now they got to find a way to keep him at a reasonable price.
Jerry, do you have any argument to that we got the best player in the Marvin Bagley deal?
Tony is 100% right, in my opinion. I hate to give him all that credit, but he deserves it on that jumping out there on that one.
I'm just hunting for a soundbite.
Well, it appears, and we could all be proven wrong, but so far Lyles is what they call available, which is very, very, very nice.
The best
very
ability. Now, Tony, you mentioned this. He's done at the end of the season. There is no player option, no team option for Trey Lyles. If you were to extend somebody like Trey, Jerry, how much onus would you put on, one, signing him in the offseason, and two, how much do you feel like you'd give a guy who's coming off the bench like that?
Well, I think right now, I think you'd want to try to keep him unless you've got better options. And I don't think they do at the moment. I mean, so that can change. And that itself would dictate value. I think, you'd really want to look around the league and kind of get a sense of who would be interested in what they have available. I would be willing to guess that I'd be surprised at this stage, because he's been in enough places. There's not like these teams saying, boy, whatever we do, let's clear cap space for Trey Lyles. That isn't happening. So, he, to my mind, veteran minimum plus something would probably pretty good shape.
Sure. Tony, he's making $2.5 million this year. How much are you going over that to keep him next year?
I'd give him a pay bump. The Kings do have his early bird rights, which should help them keep him. But every team in the league, or almost every team in the league, will have things like the biannual exception or the MLE. So he is a player that anyone can afford, and that makes it trickier for the Kings, I guess, because if you look at what he's done this year and I mean, everyone who doesn't want shooting from a big off the bench, he's an easy player to slot into any rotation if he's going to contribute like this. So, and the fact that everyone can afford him does kind of hurt the Kings, because it isn't a situation where, I mean, it wouldn't be smart to overpay anyways, but it's not a situation where they can just overpay and keep him. The amount of money he should be making is something every team can afford. So he'll, and rightfully so, go to whatever's the best fit for him. But there'll be competition, I think, because he will be pretty pretty affordable.
Yeah, that's why I would say once you kind of know there's teams out there that would do that, then go over it. Especially if he wants to stay. So if it's $6.5 million that you're dealing with, well, and you want to keep him, don't let 500,000 or $1 million be the difference. Now, it's another thing. Just he and his agent are saying they can get 25 million or 20 million. You'd say, boy, we've enjoyed having you.
Yeah,
that type of thing.
So I want to stay with big guys off the bench for the Kings here. I want to talk about a specific game and then talk more generally about Richaun Holmes. In that game against the Lakers that the Kings won, Sabonis sat with a non-COVID illness. In a very tightly contested game, the guy went 7 for 7 from the field. He had 16 points, 11 rebounds, 2 incredibly clutch free throws to seal the game. He didn't play the next night. He averaged 5 minutes and 14 minutes in the next 2 games after that. But you can call me crazy if you want to, but I think that even in the limited time that the guys just kind of looked more like the Richaun Holmes we know and love. I mean, that's hard to tell in 5-minute and 14-minute spurts, but am I crazy? Have you guys seen kind of a turnaround from Richaun Holmes and the way he's played in the last few weeks?
Well, if you're crazy, so am I, which that doesn't change anything, I know. but I mean, I think he's getting back to being Richaun, and I think that, and I hope, and I kind of wish they'd stay with him a little bit more. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to play Sabonis a little less. I think as long as you got a guy like Holmes playing like he is, he's going to rebound per minute. He's going to, he's athletic. He's going to be tough. I mean, is he going to solve all your problems? No. And you can't play the same way with him. But as we've seen, and I think you point out, one of the reasons he's playing well, they're not trying to play the same way with him. Basically, he'll catch it and just move it. He's not looking to make an assist and kind of just keep the ball moving. So I just wish, and I understand Monty's predicament, but for Monty and the coach, but for Richaun to win the game, basically be the difference maker that you couldn't have counted on, and then not play the next game, or what?
Yeah, I was curious about that. What was your thinking on that? Was there any sort of GM reason floating in your head that you're like, oh, I understand from this perspective that Will and Tony can't? I know why Richaun Holmes won the game for the Lakers, went 7 for 7, perfect from the field, played some really great defense down the stretch, hit 2 clutch free throws to win, and the next night it's like, we got to give him a rest.
Well, I don't know. And I've learned a lot in basketball, but I've realized I'm only about 79, so I don't understand that.
You'll learn on your 80th birthday. Yeah.
As I age, I might get that. The only thing I can think of is just, Coach Brown really is obviously gets along well with his players and feels some obligation made to him, and it may have just been a case of, okay, I think we can win this way, which didn't, but I mean, as opposed to, and wanting to show Metu, he still has confidence in him, even though, and we know we need you, so we're going to make sure you get some minutes. And I can't say I mean, I don't agree with it, but I can sort of understand it, and I'd certainly give Mike Brown and Monte McNair a pass. Not that the general manager generally is involved, but I'd give him a pass just because he had made many mistakes, if any.
It's hard to criticize a guy who had taken a team that won 30 games the year previous to nearly 30 games before February. So, Tony, what do you have to say about Richaun Holmes and a sudden spurt of competence?
I think he's been better, and I think he'll probably get a few more consistent minutes now that Metu is day-to-day with a knee injury. And I think my take on Holmes at this point is it seems like the energy is back a little bit for him. And that's what was so weird about the struggles at the beginning of the year. He just had no life on the court, and that is not who he has been here. That's actually been his greatest pro on the court, is that he plays hard and he's got a lot of energy, and he's yelling not at other players, but he's yelling at himself. He's self-motivating. He's an energy guy, and we haven't seen it for 90% of the season. And it seems like we're starting to see a little bit more of that now. So if he can carry that through the rest of the year, then that's great news for the Kings, because that's when he's good. He's good when he's playing hard and screaming from dunks and things like that. And when he's not doing those things, it's been an issue. So do more of that, Rashawn, I guess.
Is this a situation, Jerry and Tony, you guys can both answer this. Do you guys feel like this is a situation where Rashawn finally gets what the coaches are telling him? Is this a thing where the coaches finally understand what Rashawn Holmes, like the essence of Rashawn Holmes is? Or is this even something where the GM comes down and goes, puts a hand on his shoulder and goes, we can't trade you unless you play well. And so step up and we'll get you someplace you need to be. Where in there lies the truth in terms of what's motivating Rashawn Holmes to suddenly become Rashawn Holmes again?
Anything could be speculation, and except from Rashawn, I think. But having said that, I'm going to speculate. It certainly seemed to me, it certainly had his issues last year, with the domestic situation and marriage and all that. And certainly, those kind of things weigh heavy on you, even when you're innocent, and you are. I've never been, but I can understand that. But this year, I really believe it was a little bit of a pout. I believe that he lost his starting job, and he knew it. And I do have some information. Is that Coach Brown, to his credit, is like, you're either all in or you're not. And he wasn't all in my opinion, and I think others that. Which comes as a great surprise, by the way, and disappointment. But I honestly think he's back on track. Good people make bad decisions. For all the wrong reasons sometimes. And I classify Rashawn there, and certainly the idea of the trade deadline probably has been good. For all. I mean, I don't know any more than that, but he's a legitimate NBA center, backup center, maybe a starting center on a weak team, but it's good to see him playing better. And I just hope that maybe he gets a reason to kind of continue, be rewarded for, playing with a lot of enthusiasm and productivity.
Was there ever a moment in your time as a coach, Jerry, or even as a GM, where you had to sit down a guy like Rashawn Holmes and go, listen, the guy that we traded for, like Rashawn or Domantas Sabonis he's first in the league in rebounds. He's 11th in assists per game. He is 9th in the league in 2-point field goal percentage. Like, I know you're pouting because you want to start, but the guy is going to be an MVP candidate. Please knock it off. Like, have you ever had to light a fire under somebody's ass like that because they pouted over a trade where they got moved to the bench?
Yeah, not there wasn't any Hall of Famers for any of that, but there's a couple of young guys that that we had drafted, knowing full well that they'd be good players or could be good players in the league, and it was Anthony Bonner from St. Louis, like about 23rd pick, and he was really upset that he wasn't getting more time at small forward, and I said, well, the guy that's playing there is better than you are. And so as long as Lionel Simmons is standing up, he's going to play a lot of minutes. So, and I said, I understand. And you want to play more and you're unhappy about it. And that's the way you should be. You don't want a bunch of happy guys not playing. You want supportive players not playing, but not happy to not be playing. So, I think there's another young player in that same draft. 14th pick, escapes me now, but looked like a promising player, just too small. And I remember trying to pump him up a little bit, and then, kind of dressing him down a little bit. Same, it just wasn't getting anywhere. And that's when it kind of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
and had moved him on. And he was out of the league pretty quick. And, it's one of those draft mistakes, which it was, but trading for Spud Webb. So we end up, for where he was drafted, we got more production than we would have got.
Yeah. Tony, how do you feel about Rashawn Holmes finally revamping his style here?
I guess we'll see if it continues. But I do think if you're an NBA player, and Rashawn Holmes is, I can see being pouty, especially on the Kings, a team that has historically lost a lot of games. But if you can't get swept up in what the Kings are doing right now and having that turn your pouty energy into just wanting to contribute to it, then you've got some real issues. And so maybe Rashawn Holmes is just coming around. Like, he's just been suffocated by so many good vibes and the beam and the national press and the attention and the way people are talking about the Kings. It would be a hard pout to me at this stage to still have that mindset with so many things going right. And maybe now he just wants to be a part of it, because you pout for 40 games and your position doesn't change, your minutes don't change, you don't get traded. At some point, you would think a smart player, and Rashawn Holmes has shown himself to be a productive, pretty good NBA player. At some point, if you have any self-awareness, or if you can read the room, you realize that this ship is moving in the right direction with or without me. And I might as well try and contribute in the minutes that I'm getting. And that's kind of how I would take it if I were him. You eventually have to come around. It'd be different if the Kings were losing. I think you'd still see the pouting and the effort issues, and you might get public trade requests and all that sorts of things. But to not buy in with what's happening here at this stage would take a special kind of powder that I don't think Rashawn Holmes is.
All right. Well, I've saved the best for last here. And I'm going to start this with a question. I'm going to roll off a little bit here. What the hell has gotten into Harrison Barnes? I'm going to cheat here slightly by including the Orlando game from a few days prior to our last pod. But in the last 8 games, Barnes is averaging 22.5 points on 57.9% shooting from the field and 60% from deep, on a 10th of a percentage point below 7 attempts a game. He's had 4 games during this stretch where he scored 27 or more points, and just 2 where he scored sub 20. He scored 27 points or more just once the entire season prior to the stretch. He's hit 5 threes or more in half of the games in this stretch. Jerry, Tony, please explain Harrison Barnes to my absolutely disbelieving eyes.
Well, Harrison's a really good player. That was
and stop right there. Perfect.
Yeah, it's one of those things. He's probably playing a little better than he is right now. Things just as when everybody was ready to trade him for chopped liver early in the year, when he was playing well beneath his talent level.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that, Roy McIlroy doesn't shoot 66 every round. He goes a couple of weeks really, not making the top 20 in a lot of tournaments. So I mean, with Harris, the only thing I could come up with, and I really might be something, is, with a new year, new coach, he's such a conscientious guy. Mm-hmm. I think almost to a fault, he's trying to do exactly what the coach wants. And what the coach wants is, don't do exactly what I say, just go play. And I think it took him a while. And then again, it took him a little longer for him and Sabonis to get on that rare wavelength that he seems to be with so many. And here in the last few games, you see he's really getting Harrison shots like he got Herter.
Yeah.
And so how's that for a summary?
That's perfect, Jerry. Tony, follow that
up. I'm just going to steal a quote that our guy Brendan Nunez posted on Twitter from Mike Brown about Harrison Barnes. And Mike Brown said Harrison Barnes is irreplaceable from the standpoint where he brings a calming presence. Our 2 all-stars are learning how to lead. They haven't necessarily been in high-pressure situations and come out on top, and HB has. He has to be around, which to me, if Mike Brown, who I think is like a chemistry wizard, is viewing Harrison Barnes as such a key piece to what this team has done so far, and just the idea that he has to be around is maybe a not so subtle message to McNair to keep this guy. Not only don't trade him at the deadline, but we need him as part of this core moving forward. He's also a free agent into the year, so contract year is a nice motivator for Harrison Barnes too. But yeah, he's been arguably their best player in January, and he's playing a ton of minutes. He's doing it all. And I mean, again, another player who had his 3-point percentage for like 50 or I want to say like 80% of the year was really below his career average. And he's been so hot in January that he's back to a 39% 3-point shooter, which is just great production from him. And he's made himself, I would agree with Mike Brown there. He's made himself pretty irreplaceable with this recent stretch.
Gary, I'm curious, only because this was the next thing we were going to talk about. So I appreciate Tony pushing us right into it right before we can do it, right? It sounds like Harrison Barnes has Coach Brown's vote to stick around for a while. Do you see any situation where Monte McNair moves Barnes with the way things are rolling right now with the team?
Well, there's always a situation, but I mean, under any logical possibilities, if all of a sudden the Nets want to trade Durant for him, well, no, he's probably going to get traded. But I mean, realistically, I'm convinced they're happy with him. I mean, they should be. He's everything they need, and I don't think you could get anybody better. Now, my thought on Coach Brown making that statement, and probably is a little different, and not on the right. But I think he's talking to the fans.
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
Coach Brown knows they're not going to trade Harrison Barnes unless he's in favor of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's not worried. I mean, I guarantee you, I mean, I don't care if Monty got a 45-year contract. The coach right now is pretty strong hand.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I really do. And I know that he is very much in tune to what's said here and there and everywhere, and how basically, if you could trade Barnes for, Collins, or, there's, that's all out there. Let's face it, we've been part of it.
Oh yeah.
And so, but I think Coach Brown has always been a little more in tune to these type things than most coaches. I know Rick Adelman would not have heard a single one.
Yeah.
But I think Coach Brown is different, and I think that's a strength personally, but as long as you don't let it get to you. But I think that's all he was doing, was saying, here, we love him and you best be loving him, type of thing.
Yeah. So Kevin Pippen and I have gone back and forth for years on Twitter, and we talk on the Kings Herald Slack that we have, and specifically about Harrison Barnes. It was always a sticking point for each of us that I felt one way and Kevin has felt the opposite way about it. And I would consider myself a foremost Harrison Barnes skeptic. Like, it's one of those things that, like, over the last 3 or 4 seasons, there were times over the last few years here where the man played checked out. He played like a guy who he didn't belong on a roster of struggling kids and struggling coaches. And you could even see it in his face that he felt like he didn't belong there. I mean, he was professional, but for a team that was always just like a trigger away from resetting, Harrison Barnes, in my eyes, was like, that was the asset to be traded. That was the guy that you could get an extra first round pick for when it was time to blow the ship. That was the match to throw on the pile of dynamite. Harrison Barnes, even the first 9 or 10 games this season, was averaging 10 points a game, shooting like 20% from deep. But like, all props to Harrison, all props to Monte McNair and the coach Mike Brown. Like, that dude is not playing like the best player, like the best 4th or 5th player on a contender. Like, he's playing like the 3rd best player on the 3rd seeded team in the West right now.
Yeah.
And I would have a hard time trading him. And Harrison Barnes has turned one of the most skeptical people that I know, in terms of myself, the man in the mirror, into an absolute believer. And it's one of those things that, like, I could not be happier for Harrison Barnes and for the Sacramento Kings to have a guy like Harrison Barnes. So,
well, one other, I think with Harrison too, it's one thing I think is kind of funny, because I'd heard people, critique him because he doesn't show a lot of emotion, or very little. And I said, I think the one thing that's really, really helped him is all of a sudden you got him, Davion Mitchell, and Keegan Murray, 3 basically guys that don't show anything. And so all of a sudden, but it's fine, because DeMontis and Fox and Malik Monk and those guys make up for it. But I mean, I think, to really compared to those other two, he's just a breath of fresh air. And, I mean, Harrison, he smiles every now and then, as opposed to Keegan. And I love those guys. I tell you what, just play the game, just play the next play. You can't get enough of, and they're all three like that.
Oh yeah, they absolutely are. I had never thought about that, Jerry, but you're absolutely right. We have an all stone face team. We need to play the all stone face lineup and see how that works for opponents. Okay, so we can talk about Keegan Murray's rebounding. We can talk about Keegan Murray's recent stretch of games. I just wanted to get you guys your guys' opinion on this last stretch for Keegan Murray. He had a 29-point game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's had 2 games where he's averaged 10 rebounds and 14 rebounds a game. He's just doing these things that he's starting to grow as a rookie right before our very eyes. And I'm curious to you guys' perspective on how Keegan has started to flourish in this turn of the new year.
Well, to me, he's done everything that I'd hoped to see, really. His 3-point percentage is where it is. But his rebounding and defense has made enormous strides. His instincts, he's got terrific instincts for the game. And so that really bodes well. Quick off his feet, timing is good. He's, you want him still he'll grow and get stronger, things like that. But I guess I know in summary what I'd say about Keegan, I've always said he's a really, really good young player that's very good and getting gooder.
Tony, what do you have to say about the most goodest of the rookies on the Kings here?
Another great rookie wearing number 13 is what I'll start off with. But I pulled one number for Keegan. Among players who have shot at least 200 threes this season, Keegan Murray is 6th in 3-point percentage at 42%. So at 60% of the season through his rookie year, he's literally one of the best volume 3-point shooters in the league, at a position in the front court where teams are always looking for one of their front court players who can spread the floor. And arguably no one is doing it better than him. Again, as a rookie is incredible for how good we view Kevin Huerter as a 3-point shooter. Murray is shooting the 3 better than Huerter, which is crazy. His shooting, there are things that Keegan Murray still hasn't shown offensively. Like his offensive game hasn't been very diverse, but man, when the Kings drafted him, I knew they were getting a good shooter, but he really is at times looking like a Klay Thompson-esque shooter at a front court position. Just money. Every time he shoots it, I think it's going in, which is a great place for your rookie to be at. And he's getting stronger as the season goes on, which is another thing that you don't often find from rookies. The rookie wall is a thing that people talk about all the time. Keegan, if anything, is kind of blasting through that here as players start to get tired heading into the All-Star break. So hopefully he can keep this up, because he has become a very, very valuable piece to why the Kings are playing so well.
Well, he is a perfect fit on this team, and this team is a perfect fit for him. Yeah. It really is both. So, I think going forward, it's just going to be really neat if he can just continue to improve gradually. I think that we've already got a better player than we had a right to expect, I think, but I think all the best is ahead.
That game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, he had 29 points. He had 14 rebounds. He shot 5 of 7 from 3. His only 2 misses were from deep, because he was 10 of 12 from the field. That was one of those games where I, as a jaded Kings fan, allowed myself to believe for a second. And it was terrifying, because the Kings, in my mind, for a moment there, it was almost like the Kings might not need to trade for their 3rd star. If Keegan Murray can even play shades of that kind of game in Oklahoma City, they might have already drafted their 3rd star, and they're just kind of waiting for him to grow into his own. And that's a terrifying thought for a Kings fan. I tried to keep that at arm's length as soon as I thought it.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that at the end of the game, I sat there after the game thinking, it was like, oh God, if Keegan Murray is this good, the Kings could be good for a very, very, very long time.
Well, here's something that ought to scare you pretty good. Just really how much better is Keegan Murray as a rookie than Lauri Markkanen was?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, he's better.
Yeah.
Now he's a little smaller, but so anyway, and patience is a virtue, but I think there's a chance for him to be, when it's all said and done, he certainly could even be the second best rookie in his class. As far as value to a team and winning basketball games.
You're absolutely right on that, Jerry. Okay, last point I want to kind of make, and things that are kind of standing out right now. Everybody knows this. I don't have to say it, but everybody knows this. The Kings are third in the West right now. The Kings have a 3.5 game lead on the Clippers for the Pacific Division title. Not that the Pacific Division title means anything other than a banner at the Golden One Center, but like, I guess what I'll say is like, it to me, it's a shock. It should be a shock to everybody. And even if we talk about it 100 times more this podcast, it'll still be a shock. I'm curious as to what you guys think, kind of projecting forward here. Do you really think that the Kings can hold this Pacific Division lead? Is there a time where you think the Clippers will come on with Kawhi and Paul George, or the Suns when Devin Booker gets back, or the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry? Like, how deep into the Kings cult are you right now that you think that the Kings can hold the third seed in the West and a Pacific Division title in the balance? Or is this something where it's like, hey, we're playing really well right now, we should brace for impact, plan for settling around the 6th seed and 2nd or 3rd in the division?
Well, you always want to hope for the best, and there's your third until you're not. And you beat the second team last night handily, of course, without two of their key guys. We all know that. We don't, but that's injuries or whatever. I've got real concern that they can hold on to third because of just exactly what you said and the injury thing, because the Kings have been, and I'm knocking on wood here, they've been the luckiest team in the league that way, and they've got to stay healthy. To me, Fox and Sabonis have got to find a way to play 75 games, and Harrison Barnes play 75 games. And if that happens, I think they could stay in the top 6. I just worry about teams that are pretty good that have some key guys out, unfortunately, like the Pelicans, the Warriors. You just can't count the Warriors out. And God, I just dread the thought of maybe the Lakers making some sort of run. And you do expect the Clippers to get it together, with Kawhi Leonard playing now. So through no fault of the Kings, and that's what I'd say is, just based on overall talent, some of these teams have that are, in my mind, the Clippers that are behind, if they fall to 6, will I be upset? No, I never thought they'd make 6 when the thing started.
Tony, there is a 11.5 games separating the Denver Nuggets at the top of the Northwest Conference and the Portland Trailblazers at the bottom of the Northwest Conference. There is 20 games separating the Memphis Grizzlies at the top of the Southwest Conference, and between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Houston Rockets, there in the Southwest Conference, there's a 20-game gap. Between the top and bottom of the Pacific Division, there is a 5.5 game gap. Is that something that you feel like the Kings can hold on to? Do you reasonably expect the Kings to continue this?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of believe in the Kings now. I'm looking at the West, and Jerry's right. A lot of this comes down to injury. Western Conference teams can get healthier, and that kind of closes the gap. The Kings can suffer some injuries, and that closes the gap. But there have definitely been years where I feared the Western Conference more than I do right now. I'm just not. I don't worry about the teams that they're playing better than, and health will obviously impact that. But I think they're playing so well. 7-3 of their last 10 games. And they've lost those 3 games by a total of 10 points. They lost the 76ers by 2, Lakers by 2, and the Hawks by 3. So even the games that they're losing with how they're playing right now, they're barely losing. They're 7 points away from 10-0, not to get even more optimistic. But just the way, I haven't had this level of faith in a while. And that's also coupled with the fact that the West is just not a conference that I'm fearing at the moment. But injuries can obviously swing all of that.
Yeah, the other thing too, and it's like Tony pointed out, the West. I think Denver's a team it'd be hard to say you're better than. But there's nobody else. There really isn't. The Grizzlies are second, and just deservedly. Now they didn't have it, but the Kings are 2-2 with them. So, but I just can't get past. Maybe it's just being an old cynic, but. It's like the Clippers. They've got a good coach, And both those, and big ifs, if both of those guys come back and really play, they can make up some ground. You just hope that, less like the Warriors, you just hope before they get it together, you've got a 5 or 6 game lead.
Well, we've discussed the third best team in the West. Now let's hear Jerry talk about the best team in Sacramento, Sacramento Electronic Supply. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jerry Reynolds for Sacramento Electronic Supply, who has been servicing the Sacramento area's industrial electronic needs for over 75 years. Family owned and operated, Sacramento Electronics is a registered California small business that prides themselves on their customer service. Their showroom and warehouse are open to the public to browse. Whether you're looking for wire and cable, tools and testers, connectors, or relays, Sacramento Electronics is open for you Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., directly south of Costco in Rancho Cordova, or hey, visit them online 24/7 at www.sacelec.com and do it.
Okay, we're back. We're going to roll now into our Anything But Kings segment. This is a segment I get to give Tony and Jerry a chance to talk about anything, any game, any other storyline in the sports world that they've encountered over the last 2 weeks. The only rule is they don't get to talk about the Kings. Jerry, I know you're itching to talk some football. So what do you got for us?
Well, I'm just so thrilled about Purdy with the Niners. You know, I mean, he's more than Purdy good. You know, I mean, it's one of those things too. And, you know, the last pick in the draft, 7th rounder, 7-0. It's just really an exciting story. And then, it just goes to show you too, the quarterback experts so often aren't, and they'll say, well, yeah, how good can he be? He was a 7th round pick. Well, Tom Brady was a 6th round pick. He turned out pretty good. Joe Montana was the 3rd round pick. Brett Favre was a 2nd round pick. I guess I'd be more inclined to be surprised if if somehow a top 5 pick was really good. But anyway, so I'm just so happy I like the Niners a lot. Now it's going to be tough for me if they had the Chiefs meet in the Super Bowl. Because my son might leave. I mean, I've always been a Chiefs fan. It goes back a long way. I mean, I was thrilled when they were good, and I was a young coach in Kansas City, and get to meet Hank Stram and Willie Lanier and some of those guys. I mean, it's like, so there's some Chief history there, but I kind of like the Niners team better. I do. I just have really enjoyed them. And Christian McCaffrey's just a special talent. Deebo Samuel. I mean, the Kittles. I mean, he's a Scott Pollard of power forwards. So anyway, so that's my thought.
Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to talk about the football games too. I can finally watch football again. I took a few weeks off there because the Patriots were so bad. I kind of got sour on the entire sport. But these Final Four teams are all exciting, and I don't know who's going to win either of the conference final games, which is fun for someone who only kind of passively cares about football when my team's not involved. But Will, I don't know where you fall on this Niners fan spectrum, but that's the team I'm rooting for after watching the games this weekend, of course, mostly because I want my Sacramento people to continue winning. And it seems like a lot of our fan base is Niners fans as well.
I don't have a particular football team. I was a Patriots fan for a while when I was a kid. The year I picked the Patriots because I had family in the military and this and that, I thought, oh yeah, that's the one to go for. Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback, and then he wasn't, and they won a Super Bowl. And I was like, oh, this is pretty easy. I like this picking teams. And then after like the third one, I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that picture of the actor Rob Lowe, where he's got a hat where it just has the NFL logo on it, where he roots for all. I just root for as much chaos as possible. I enjoy the storylines. Like, I'm very happy for Brock Purdy. I have a lot of people that come into my line of work every single day that are excited about Brock Purdy. So I'm incredibly happy for him. I'm happy for Niners fans. I was always kind of the guy that if I had a bunch of Niners fans in high school and in college that were my friends, so I was always like, oh, I'm a Raiders fan, just to annoy them more than anything. Oh, I'm a Patriots fan, just to really get under their skin. I don't really care. I'm rooting for a good game. Jerry, if it's Niners Chiefs, I'll root for the Chiefs. I'll kind of side there. So if you want to root for the Niners a little bit, you certainly can. You're okay.
Well, I don't think I'll be able to, because I'm going to, the only promise to go, I'm going to my son's house to watch it. So, so no, I felt but like I say, I think the Niners, well, good chance neither team will make it. So there you go. I mean, there's nothing but good teams left. And so whoever makes it is probably, it's not sometimes about being the best. It's about being the most fortunate, in any championship kind of a situation. You got to put yourself in a position where you can take advantage. But, it's like that game with the Niners. If Kittles don't make that catch, it could be a very different game.
Okay, so mine's going to be, and this is going to be a little bit tongue in cheek here. I missed the first 3 quarters of the Grizzlies game, and I went back to watch it later because I had it recorded. And instead of getting, and I checked on Twitter and I saw this was a thing, but instead of getting the first quarter recorded of, like, I was excited to see a record-breaking quarter for the Kings in terms of threes. I got the National Dog Show. And so my anything but Kings is, I want to congratulate Newton the Brussels Griffon for winning the toy group. I have a dog that's a Brussels Griffon. They're a little ugly Ewok. And so I was very happy to see that Newton the Brussels Griffon won the toy group for the National Dog Show. I'd like to thank NBC Sports California for allowing my dog to see his heroes rather than seeing my sports heroes out there breaking records. So congratulations to Newton the Brussels Griffon. It wasn't record-breaking amount of threes in a quarter, but my dog was happy. And so that's all that matters on that one.
Well,
congrats, Newton.
Oh, boy.
Thank you, NBC Sports California. I truly appreciate the way that went down.
It's always good for me just to learn about people that are stranger than I am. Thanks, Will. Appreciate that.
I tried to watch the game, Jerry. I had it all recorded and everything, and I'm sitting there going, like, as soon as it's commercial break, we're getting to some 3-pointers, and here comes Newton. And Newton's breed is a Brussels Griffon. It's the inspiration for the Ewoks in Star Wars. And it's like, get to it. And it finally changes over, and it's the middle of the second quarter. It's like, oh, I hate my life. Okay, Tony, let's roll over to the Patreon.
Thanks, Will. So on every episode of this podcast, we ask at least one question from our Kings Herald patrons. You can subscribe at patreon.com/Kings Herald. Every week we ask for questions. We ask one on the main show here, and any question that doesn't get answered on this podcast gets answered in a Q&A that we do once a month over there. We just posted one last week, and we got a lot of really good questions in this week. So I wanted to ask a few to Will and Jerry on the podcast today. The first one comes from Sacktown Smackdown, and he asks, if this team can lock in defensively, what's their ceiling? Seeing Fox actually play defense last night gives me hope that the team can turn it around. They've already sort of turned it around, but Jerry, what's the ceiling for this team right now?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's possible for them to be in one of the elite defensive teams. They just don't really have what they need there. But I do think there's enough athleticism and together, you see the togetherness on offense. You've got to at some point be a little better defensively. Can they get 3-4 points better? Can they move up to 12th or 14th? Something like that would be, I think, an amazing step up, because they're so good offensively. So you don't have to be. I mean, the Warriors have proved that. I mean, they were more than competent defensively, but brilliant offensively. Well, that works. And right now, the Kings really are just not very good on defense, and they need to get a little bit better. And if they do that, they can probably stay where they are.
Will, I will adjust this question for you slightly. How high can the Kings finish this year? Assuming they're not going to make the NBA Finals, but we didn't see them being in third place either. So what is their ceiling finish for you?
Are we talking about just defensive rating, or are we talking defensively? Or are we talking in general here?
I want in general. What's the best case outcome for the rest of the season in a real world?
I think they could win a playoff series. like that is insane. Like the will that I remember from the summer is kicking the front of my forehead right now, screaming like, "Don't do it, don't jinx it!" Like, but like I do. Like the Portland Trailblazers a couple of years ago kind of went on a run to the Western Conference Finals with Dame, and like I feel like that's like the absolute like, oh my God, I can't believe they did it. They got swept in the Western Conference Finals by the Denver Nuggets. This is the best season I'll ever I've ever thought. Like,
Yeah.
If they get swept in the Western Conference Finals, I will be crying in the streets, happy about everything. I do the realistic like best outcome. I do think they could win a playoff series. I do, considering where they are right now, having a home court advantage like Golden One Center provides them. If it wound up being, I'm checking here real quick. Like if it wound up being the Minnesota Timberwolves, or if it wound up being, if the Dallas Mavericks came to town, I could see the Dallas Mavericks. First of all, that would be a fantastic series, by the way.
Incredible.
Having Luka in Sacramento for the first playoff series since would be.
Oh man.
And it would just be one of those things that like I could see them beating the Dallas Mavericks because you eliminate Luka or you contain Luka a little bit and then you let the rest of the guys cook and see what happens. But that'd be one of those things that I'm not expecting. I'm not thinking about it past the, oh boy, howdy, in my dreams would I ever wish this to happen. But I do think I can squint there and see a team that wins a first round playoff series.
Well, the other thing is, it shocks me a little bit, and I allow myself to occasionally not be an old grump and think of those wonderful things. And just a couple of years ago, the Atlanta Hawks went from being a non-team to the Eastern Finals.
Mm-hmm.
So and I really think the talent is somewhat comparable. Both at if you look at it at that time going into the playoffs, nobody was that high on. I mean, Trae Young got his numbers, but nobody saw him as a guy that could be a key guy on a Eastern finalist. Well, he was, and of course they're not now. But I mean, teams can make real strides. We saw that. We've seen that with the Grizzlies. So I think that's what gives me hope. And like I said before, I mean, if they're sixth, I'd be proud as heck. I mean, I would not be mad at them. I think they're too good to be eighth now, but I wouldn't want to be a jerk about it and say, think everybody should get fired or something for being eighth. No, they all should get raises and because we all know what we expected. So anyway, I really enjoy watching this team. That's all I come back to saying that. It's almost as much fun for me as watching Jay Will in his early days. But that sort of thing where it's just such a joy just to go watch them and hope they win. And as long as they compete and put on a show, I was okay with it, and I still am.
So there was one trade in the NBA yesterday. The Lakers traded Kendrick Nunn and 3 second-round picks for Rui Hachimura. And John Catterson asked a question around this trade. He wants to ask for each person, would you have traded Terrence Davis and 3 second-round picks to the Wizards for Rui when it was possible? So, Jerry, your thoughts on the trade, and would you have liked to see the Kings kind of make that similar move where, you replaced Nunn with Davis and you get the 3 second-round picks, and then the Kings have Rui at the end of the day?
Well, I think it's a great trade for the Lakers. I hate to say it. I mean, he really does have enough talent to give him another weapon, and he's going to get open shots and a big that is very mobile. I mean, he really hasn't played as well as his talent, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so being with LeBron, I think would have to be good for him. So, but we'll see. Should the Kings have done it? Terrence Davis in 3 seconds. I mean, I would have done it because seconds are seconds. I wouldn't, if you could spread them out a little bit. Terrence is a good player, but you have him and other guys, and that's why he's not playing a lot. And Hachimura would click a lot of boxes. I don't know that he's better than Trey Lyles for sure. But that wouldn't make any difference if he isn't. If he is better or as good, well, that's just like that's better than having too many guards.
Will, your thoughts on that trade, and are you disappointed the Kings didn't get in on it, or would you have liked them to kind of make a similar move there?
The Kings right now are in a position where they don't have to make trades. Like, we're in that luxurious spot of like, oh, we could just ride this out and see what happens. And like, that's a weird spot to be in as a Kings fan. Like Cam Reddish last year, when Cam Reddish got traded to the New York Knicks, it was one of those things that a lot of Kings fans were like, oh my God, that's all it took. And like, even I was like, damn, I would have liked to have Cam Reddish for that price. Roy Hachimura is one of those guys that I'm like, oh yeah, like I would have loved to have had him for three second round picks and a TD. But it's also one of those things too that like, he's one of those guys that's not good at anything yet. And that could be that he's good at everything and he just hasn't had a chance to prove himself on a team where like his strengths are kind of boosted. But that could also mean that he's just not that good at anything. And so I have high hopes for Rui. If he was on the Kings, I'd be excited for him. But like, I'm not incredibly disappointed the Kings didn't make that trade. I can understand maybe even if it's for chemistry sake, it's like, oh, we'll just roll with what we've got until a better deal comes along. But the price paid was not that much. And the Lakers do have a guy that has a lot of potential there. It'll just be interesting to see how much that potential is unlocked with LeBron or if he's just not that good of a player.
Yeah, I really like this trade for the Lakers, and I would have loved it if the Kings made it. I like Rui. I think he's pretty talented. Yeah. The times that I watched the Wizards, which is not a lot, thankfully, I've liked what I've seen from him, and I think he's also coming from an organization that you love to take players from. Yeah. Like if I can pick any young player that underperformed somewhere to see if they would perform in a change of scenery situation, the Wizards would be near the top of my list. So I like Rui. If it was another player, and I agree with you, Will, like we did the same thing with Cam Reddish that, I wish the Kings were in on this. At least for this one, it's second round picks instead of a first round pick. And the Kings have so many of them that have so often turned into nobody valuable for this team. Yeah. They've just thrown away either by selling them outright or drafting the wrong players. They have not gotten a lot out of the second round in a long time. Since Isaiah Thomas, really, there's been no rotation players that I can think of that the Kings got out of the second round. So, and I think Rui is definitely an NBA player. We'll see how much playing with the Lakers improves his stock in the league, but I like that move for them. And I would have loved it if the Kings did that too, just because they have a lot of second rounders. They have not gotten a lot out of them. And I do think Rui is at the very least going to be a pretty good rotation player, but I guess we'll see. But he's in a good spot now. I like the fit with the Lakers. So
I think a lot of that is perspective. Like if the Kings had 12 wins right now, I'd be pissed. Like I would be right. Like, what the hell? Like, it would have taken but like we're sitting at third right now. I'm kind of like, good for the Lakers, over there in 12th place. Like hope that works for them.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid it will, but that's what really scares me. But too, it's like on the 12th pick, you're so right, and you would be right to be upset. Because if you have 12 wins, clearly you need to trade some people. Yeah. And there's no risk. Quite honestly, as good as he is, I think he's very good. There would be a risk, of actually making your team better. It doesn't always work that way. And so, I mean, I haven't said I would still think if it's 3 picks, I'd be like Tony. I mean, 3 second round picks. For a proven player that was a lottery pick, of course, I think that's why Washington did what they did, getting Nunn back. He was a high lottery pick. Yeah. So you got 2 mistakes going across the country. That's, that's the way it's sort of viewed. And then it gets back to who got the best player. Well, I think the Lakers did.
I have one more question here from Kings France. And this is I'll just ask a question how it's been asked to us. Do you think it would benefit the team to do any trades considering what happened in 2019 after Shumpert's trade? And I guess I'll adjust that question a little bit if it makes sense to do it this way. Jerry, are you afraid of messing this up at the deadline? Like, should this just be a don't make any moves, things are going too well? The Iman Shumpert fear that if you trade anyone away, it'll kind of crumble everything into a losing streak or missing the playoffs or whatever the worst case scenario is.
I would be concerned. Yes, I sure would. When you have great chemistry and everything's flowing, obviously the team's overachieving from what anyone could have dreamed possible a few months ago. So having said that, for a particular deal, you still do it. Now it'd have to be one that you really felt good about.
Yeah.
And the truth is that the logic then really no deal's likely to be made because it's got to be such a sure thing, and you've got to get where it is one of those win-lose kind of trades that you should never count on. So no, I'd be very concerned, but don't kid yourself. You always have to look at a chance of getting a significantly more talented player if that's possible. My opinion is it wouldn't be possible. So it takes care of itself.
Will, I know you're a huge Iman Shumpert fan. So are you worried about trading anyone away? And I guess I also want to know who is the best player on this team that you would trade away that you're not worried about hurting from a chemistry standpoint? So like, where's the line for you where you think this player is good on the Kings, but you're not worried about things crumbling if they lost him?
I saw that question a little bit earlier today, so I had a little bit of time to think about it. And like Shumpert, while he might have been hailed as like, oh, he's the culture leader, he's the scorer, it's like that man was averaging like 10 points a game, less than 30 minutes a game. He was coming off the bench most of the time. He had like 3 games against the Thunder that were really, really good, where he looked really, really good. And the most of the time he was an inefficient shooter that like didn't do all that much on either end of the court. Like, I'm trying to think of who the culture setter here is. Like Sabonis, Harrison Barnes. Like, you have enough guys here, enough culture guys, enough like, oh, these are good dudes that'll hold the team together in the face of adversity, that you could trade somebody and be okay. I think Malik Monk would probably be who's the highest I could trade. Like, would it annoy De'Aaron Fox? Sure, probably. But if you got a guy who was a starting quality guy that you could bring off as a 6-man, okay, like fine. I could see Monte McNair doing that, like taking a season of Malik Monk where he's playing really well, where the vibes are good around him, and swapping him for somebody better. Like, would I be concerned? I'd be a little nervous. Like, trading Shumpert did not cause the Kings to fall out of the playoff race that year. The Kings got figured out. Like, they were running around the court. There was no secret sauce to the Kings. The secret sauce was just air. And once teams figured that out, I feel like that's what dropped the Kings to the 9th seed rather than trading for Harrison Barnes. Like that was not the mistake they made. Like there was many mistakes that season, but trading Shumpert was not one of them. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can trade a guy like Trey Lyles, or you can trade a guy like I mean, Davion Mitchell's averaging 6 points a game. He would be a guy that I could see like Monte McNair going, all right, here's another talented rookie that somebody has a belief in that I can get something really nice out of. That's enough of a sweetener on a trade that he could do that. Well, again, would that make me nervous? Sure, because I know how much Jerry likes Davion Mitchell and how much he said, like, hey, at this stage, he's further along than Kyle Lowry is. Well, I don't want to trade Kyle Lowry, but I can trade 5 points a game too. So I would not be worried about if they traded a Malik Monk or a Davion Mitchell. The vibes are not ruined, and this team is not suddenly sinking back down to earth because they have better players than what they did in 2018, 2019. Like, you're not relying on Zach Randolph, you're relying on Domantas Sabonis. And De'Aaron Fox is not young. He is now a much bigger person there. You've got surrounding talent that works. So no, I would have no qualms if Monte McNair decided to trade a 6-man, a 7th man.
But see, I mean, at some point, this team, almost for sure will have to have some additions. Yes, I go back to the early 2000 or late 1990s with Jay Will and Corliss Williamson and those guys. And it was a playoff team. People loved it. It was exciting, but it would have never got to be a 60-win team if you didn't make a couple of deals. And so that's a great thing about making the playoffs. And I think, Tony alluded to it a little bit, is that you, and we've talked about it for sure, is that you can't know what you need as much until you get there and get somebody that's better. In a 7-game series, you start saying, oh man, we're not near good enough here.
Yeah.
Or we're plenty good enough here, but we're not good enough here. And then try to solve it. Doesn't mean that you can, it's going back 100 years, it's the old Boston Strangler, Cedric Toney, and Tony where Boston actually made a deal just because of him, because they couldn't deal with him, and they got Dennis Johnson, and he dealt with it, and so they went from being the contender to champs, and so So anyway, yeah, I need to. I love this team the way it is. I know things are going to have to be done to get better. Experience is one of them, but talent wise, if your goal is to not just be in the playoffs once, you're going to have to make some moves, and some the fans won't like. And Jeff Victory always said, and that's so wise, if you want to lead the band, you got to turn your back to the fans. Mm-hmm. And the audience. And I think that's where, and Monte McNair, I tell you, I have no doubt that he's up to the task when the time comes. And I'd be very confident if he made a deal, by the way. I'd probably do less second guessing than a lot of people, because I think he's earned his stripes and then some. But, because at some point he and the coach would have been on board with it and feel that it, and they feel that it would work for them. And that'd be enough for me.
All right, Will, that's all I got.
All right, Jerry, we're going to run over you then for the Reynolds wrap up. What do you got for us this week?
Well, this is just came up. I was reading a story about Pat Riley, and actually was doing the old fashioned three that Whitey Gleason and the Phantom and I started doing a little bit, having some fun with. But he had brought up, well, there was a story about Pat Riley, and I don't know if you saw it. And I said, yeah, I did. He said, well, I know you really resent, or you never liked him at all, or something like that. And I said, no, I belong to Pat. I mean, he was always a good guy to be around. I mean, I knew him before he wasn't really Pat Riley. I mean, he went through several transformations before he got to be the Pat Riley that we know. But I said, no, I think the world of him. And then we got to talk about it. But the real story is that he made a statement talking about today's game and especially Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and talking about LeBron passing his numbers, and he still says probably the greatest player to ever play the game when you look at the college experience and all that, and it just came up, and I said, that what people forget, he had the most unblockable shot, and as good as Magic was, and Worthy, and Bird or Parrish or McHale, anybody in that time, one thing you did know, even as Kareem was aging, they'd Riley hold up 5 fingers. That meant the ball was going to cap, and he was going to shoot a half hook, sometimes 15, 18 footers. People never appreciate how hard that was, not only to block, but to make. He did that. And as a person who's a close personal witness, I mean, they can try to get a shot for 20 seconds, can't get one. Okay, hold up 5. And I don't think there's ever been a player like him in that regard. Just the what you call the go-to basket. I mean, and he did it, for years, college, pros, the whole thing. And but the last point, and this will get me back to being the old grouch that I want to be. He was talking about, he said, players in the 80s and 90s, they really felt an honor to play every game. That was really a goal. And I said, yeah, I know that, guys. And that we've lost that. And I think the NBA is going to have to come to grips with it. You just can't, in my mind, do the Steve Kerr thing and pull out all your main guys against Cleveland after they played Boston. And then, of course, they won with the reserves, but then try to say, well, it's just, I feel bad for the fans, but it's just something we had to do. No, you didn't have to do it. You could have played it. So as much as I respect him, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, it's, the load management and rest and sore toe, my back was a little stiff, couldn't go today. That's hurting the league. That's hurting the players, and it's hurting the league. So, but he to my mind, you should definitely make the case he's the greatest all-around basketball man in the history of the game.
Yes.
You know, he sees the same problems that we as fans see. It's like at some point, you know, great players have passed to do anything to get out there because of the fans, and now it just doesn't seem to be an obligation, you know, and I think it's sad. I really do.
Well, for everyone here at the Kings Herald, I want to thank you guys for listening to another episode. I want to thank our patrons, especially for tuning in and dropping some cash on us every now and again. It allows us to keep the lights on, allows us to keep doing fun things like this with Jerry and Tony. You know, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks with the trade deadline coming up, with the All-Star game coming up. We got a lot to talk about. So can't wait for it to happen, and we'll see you guys soon.
I can't wait for it to happen, and keep enjoying this team. You'll just enjoy him. What the heck?
Thanks, guys.